Good evening and welcome. I am Deacon Bernard Butler of St. Timothy Missionary Baptist Church, located at 7101 Carnegie Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio. I currently serve as the Acting Executive Director of the Light of Cleveland Incorporated, a community development corporation recently created to address some of the challenges and issues we face in our community. Today we are presenting a three-part session related to opioid addiction, treatment, and recovery. We pray that this will be a blessing and beneficial to each and every one of you.
I would like to thank everyone for joining us in the recording today as we engage in the educational offering regarding opiate addiction and the respective treatment resources in Cuyahoga County, specifically the Cleveland area. I do not believe any true discussion can be had without some learning, sharing of information, thoughts, ideas, and showing appreciation for someone's position related to the subject matter. Believe it or not, this is a critical need for our community. Today we'll talk about what is in the cupboard related to treatment options, meaning what resources we have on hand and what things are yet to be developed to be successful in treatment. You never know, someone out there might have more insight or better insight and some answers to meet the needs. So let's take care of some housekeeping items first, and then we'll jump into the discussion. This presentation is being hosted by the Light of Cleveland Corporation and LLC of Cleveland. I am proud that this group has affiliated itself with the body of Christ and has agreed to come to the table to at least begin a dialogue about addiction. Quite frankly, whatever the church was hiding knew the church, like the world, struggles with addiction. People have seen us at the dealer's home next to them. The only people shocked about what's going on are those inside the church that refuse to acknowledge the addictive disease. The process has slipped into the church and is sitting in the pews, saved and unsaved. So now that the covers have been pulled back, the curtains open to expose us to the beautiful light of truth, let's get down to dealing with this Frankenstein. Now, I want to just state this presentation is a faith-based initiative with underwriting by the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addictive Services. By way of introduction, I am Jeff Sims. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner specializing in adult psychiatry, and I do treat those who struggle with addiction, and yes, even opiate addiction. I have with me Michelle Ragland, a case manager who is actively working with those who are dually diagnosed, meaning those who have a mental illness and they struggle with addiction. Michelle and I are hired by the ASCENSION Group, an LLC of Cleveland, Ohio, to host this event. So I believe that we've taken care of all the preliminary steps. That stuff's out of the way. Now we need to get down to business. Again, today our focus will be on resources for opiate addiction in Cuyahoga County, but mainly the Cleveland area. And hello, Michelle. How are you doing?
Good,
and I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, and good evening to everyone. And again, Jeff, thank you for having me. I think Jeff has already done a good job of talking about the bare minimum of my job. As a dual diagnosed case manager, I provide assistance in different areas. I have served as a job coach and assisting those with mental health illness in becoming gainfully employed. I've also worked with assessing and adjusting the client's work performance to improve their self-esteem and to become self-sufficient. I've also worked in integrated healthcare department. Most times those suffering with mental health illness issues also have underlying or chronic health conditions that has not been detected. Getting linked with medical service to address those physical needs as well as mental health needs is very crucial.
So, Michelle, you did a better job than I did of kind of defining the scope of your work. And I'm going to go on record as saying I'm hot. It's the end of the day, but I'm ready for this dynamic discussion.
Excellent.
So the first things first.
Okay.
I think we better do a better job of defining what opiates are and how it has impacted our community. So an opiate is a substance that's used to treat severe pain. It's not something that we use for a headache or bumping our toe against an end table or a small bruise, but very severe pain. And some people are not really familiar with these kind of substances. The most commonly used are those called painkillers. That's Vicodin, Percocet, oxycodone, OxyContin, and in extreme cases, methadone. These drugs are the ones that are most commonly abused as well, and they're seen in overdose cases. Then there's the so-called street drugs, so my, air quotes, and that's heroin. I think heroin came out in the 50s and the 60s. Some say the 40s. I should know. I was back then in the 60s, but not the 50s. I'm not sure when, but it's back on the rise in our community. And what's hot in the streets right now is this drug called fentanyl. And fentanyl is what they call a synthetic opioid. And it's 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine and heroin. And it's illegal in the streets, and it's what's causing or it's what's responsible for many of the deaths. So let me talk about how opiates are ingested or placed into the system. So there's oral, you take it in the mouth. 2, there's snorting, so you snuff it up your nose or you sniff it up your nose. 3, there's smoking, and then 4, it's injection, so you make it liquid form and then you put it in your veins. And these are the methods of use for these opiates. So the question might be, and it's a good question, so why now? Why are we talking about treatment? Why are we talking about sober homes and clinical providers that can help? Why now? Why is this coming to the table?
Exactly. And I want to thank you for elaborating on the definition of opiates and the method of use. Opiate users are yearning for help based on this very addictive drug. In addition to wanting a fast, easy detox, most patients want their recovery process to be safe and free of judgment. The problem is real, and it affects millions of Americans who have unsuccessfully tried to quit using opioids on their own, perhaps many times over. Recovery is possible. And it extends from the hope that things can change. But without the right type of help, I'm talking setting and support, addicts and their loved ones will go on suffering. I have worked with people that want to get off this drug along with other ALD use.
When you say ALD, what do you mean ALD?
ALD is alcohol and other drugs. Many of the users have lost significantly. We're talking friends, family, job, dignity, self-esteem, pride, self-possessions, and in many cases, selling themselves. The list can go on and on.
So, but I have actually data to support what you just said. I'm a geek, and so I get off on that kind of stuff, the numbers and stuff like that. But there were some pertinent and potent things that you said in your delivery. One is, first of all, you want a treatment environment that's free of judgment and that's safe. And unfortunately, some of our people who are struggling with this addiction don't find that. And it's hard to find. And number 2, you said recovery is possible. So you kind of instilled hope in those individuals that, you can get better. So let me get to the geeky stuff that I really like. So numbers and data. There was a report that I viewed a couple months ago. It's called Overdose Fatality Review, Annual Report of Cuyahoga County. Overdose fatality. So when we talk about fatality, we're talking about deaths. So this report gave information back to 2016 until current day 2020. But not to bore people to death or put them to sleep, I'm just going to go over the last 3 years, the data for the last 3 years of that report. So in 2019, we had in Cuyahoga County 431 fentanyl overdose that led to death, 431. And then we had 119 heroin overdoses that led to death. So that's a big number. If you add them together. I'm not going to do my math right now on camera. And then in 2020, the preliminary data stated that we had 416 people who died of fentanyl overdose and 51 who died of heroin overdose. Now, people then started to celebrate prematurely, saying, hey, things are getting better. We had a decrease in the heroin overdose and a slight decrease in the fentanyl dose. Unfortunately, in 2021, and again, the report was published in March 19, 2021. The preliminary data indicates that we had 395 fentanyl overdose deaths, 395, and 148 heroin overdose deaths. So now what do you see? The numbers are creeping back up. There is a surge, I would say. And I think we need to be careful that we don't get too comfortable with these overdoses and these deaths. Yeah. The community is having some trouble here. So what should we do as healthcare providers? What should we do as communities? What should we do as individuals? What should we do in terms of resources and treatment?
You are absolutely right, and that is, the numbers are staggering, and it is very alarming. So opiate addiction is having a devastating impact in our community. You're talking about people individually, but what is it doing to our community? The negative consequences of drug abuse it not only affects individuals that are abusing opioids and other drugs, but it also affects their families, friends, various businesses, government resources, and yes, let's talk about the children. The impact on our children. The children are being left alone to parent for themselves and often their younger siblings. The opioid impact has a major effect on a child's mental health and self-esteem. There's been numerous reports where mothers, fathers, and yes, in some cases, grandparents that have OD'd in the presence of a child or children. I'm not sure if you've heard about the one child that was left in the back seat of the car while both parents had suffered from a drug overdose.
Well, I heard a couple of stories like that. So which one are you referencing?
This is just one of many.
Sad. Yeah.
Exactly. Can you imagine what that child was thinking? I'm sure he or she had to be afraid, or could this be a normal thing for them? In any event, it leaves an everlasting impact, and sometimes the child will follow in those same footsteps. The opioid epidemic has captured the attention of both the government and the public, because this is an enemy that it's an enemy that does not respect boundaries of income, age, gender, race, the education system. Every community in America has been impacted in some way. Presentations such as this are available for agencies, churches, and other community groups to raise awareness, provide resources, and encourage all members of our community to do their part in helping to prevent prescription drug overdose or abuse, addiction, and fatal overdose. Again, the impact on this addiction is seen in children, our teenagers, who are vulnerable and who learn to use opioids as a form of escape as well as to cope. I see it in the people, the people I help. I see it in the generational line. I see it in the parents, and now I'm seeing it in the children.
You know, one thing, when you start talking about children and you're talking about it in our community, that pulls at our community's heart.
Yeah.
We are absolutely, devastated when our children are impacted by this.
Absolutely.
Another key point you brought up was the generational line, that actually not just the grandparents, but the parents and now the children.
Exactly.
So you're talking about the loss of life. You know what? We haven't really kind of shined a light on those impacted by the deaths and the family you talked about. But I want to do a better job of defining community. Mm-hmm. And for me, I want to go back to the community I'm most familiar with. I'm a church boy, and I want to talk about our church community. And again, I know it's going to cause a little rankle with some of the people in the church, but again, it's in the church, it's in the pews, and what are we doing to address those things? And so I'm going to move away from that, and I'm going to talk about other communities, such as the AA community, Alcoholic Anonymous community, the NA community, Narcotics Anonymous community, and the CA community, the Cocaine Anonymous community. Mm-hmm. And what I want to do is I want to kind of illustrate how impactful one death can be based on a client that I had, mm-hmm. and I use the past term had. Mm-hmm. So I was seeing or treating a client that had 19 years of abstinence from opiates. So he had been away from opiates and all substances for 19 years. He actually was a leader in the NA community. He sponsored other individuals. He led those meetings, those NA meetings. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, one day, this individual went out, and I believe that he was thinking he was going to use heroin, mm-hmm. but he actually got a hold of fentanyl, and he died. Okay. Now, that's only my assumption because he can't tell us, because mm-hmm. he's dead. The problem was, this guy, after 19 years, went out, he used, and then the other people in the NA community said, well, wait a minute, if this guy has 19 years mm-hmm. and he went out and he failed and he relapsed, what are my chances that I will be okay and that I could keep this recovery journey? So several other members mm-hmm. who happened to be of his community and I was treating, they actually relapsed. Now, thankfully, these individuals did not die. Mm-hmm. They were able to kind of get themselves back together, marshal their efforts, get back in line and go back to NA and not use anymore. But from that one death, several other people failed. So I think we need to kind of consider that when we start talking about opiate addiction. Absolutely. Now, so again, one more time, indulge me. Let's move this discussion closer to home. And again, I'm a geek, so I'm going to talk about data points. I want to talk about Cleveland. Mm-hmm. More importantly, I want to talk about the zip code 44103. You know where that is? It is. It's where we're sitting.
That's right.
Yeah, so there was a report that was generated by Cuyahoga County Drug Overdose Integrated Epidemiologic Profile. And that report came out in March of 2021 as well. Mm-hmm. And they gave some important pieces of information. One, they said there were 86 opiate overdoses that went and received treatment at the emergency room in this area code. Again, the other report talked about deaths. This is talking about people who overdosed and just then went to the emergency room. Let me put a pin right here. There are people who overdose and they might not seek medical treatment. They might use Narcan or some other method to revive them. But let me say, medically, if you overdose, you need to seek treatment, because you can actually get sick again and have another episode where you overdose. So please seek treatment. I want to say that. Please seek treatment. But anyway, 86 ODs by opiates in 44103 area. And they indicated 136 overall overdoses by multiple drugs. And when I drilled down on this 136 in 2020 overdoses in this zip code, it was cocaine and fentanyl, marijuana and fentanyl. So there were other things kind of laced, put in with those drugs. So the problem is big.
Yes, it is.
And it's actually in this zip code as well. And that was data from 2020. So let me ask you again about treatment and resources. What do you think?
Again, I'd like to thank you for going over that information, and it is very important when if you survive from using fentanyl or an overdose. It is very important to go to the emergency room, get checked out immediately. I want to emphasize the case you just discussed. Those individuals who have been clean for 19 years, 6 months, or even 30 days, the potential of surviving fentanyl after you have been away from using it is very slim to none.
So emphasize that one more time, because that's important.
Oh yeah, again, fentanyl. After you have been away from using fentanyl is slim to none of survival. So let me answer your question why treatment is important. The benefit of treatment includes reduction of drug use and the risk of overdose death. Treatment is a chance to become better. It helps you begin the process of enlightenment and understanding the root cause of the addiction. It takes bravery to seek treatment and opioid addiction, and it's a life-changing experience.
Well, and I agree with you that it takes bravery, but sometimes when people are seeking treatment, it's really not on their own accord. The court might be forcing them to go there. And then it's usually a crisis, such as an overdose, or a family member saying, hey, or a wife or a significant other saying, I'm going to leave, so if you don't get treatment. But I'm glad you stated that it takes bravery.
Intervention is taking place.
Right.
Right. Yep.
So I think we laid a compelling case forward why we need resources to treat this deadly disease. It's almost like a lawyer in a courtroom that's laying out a case why this person should be set free, or a surgeon in the operating room, doing a delicate, procedure. So
as it should be.
As it should be. Okay. So let me talk about something else about resources. And this is just my humble opinion. In my humble opinion, the number of people needing treatment has overwhelmed the resources that we currently have. So I think there's more people needing treatment than the resources that we have available to them. Secondly, I want to talk about something else that is concerning. The clients who have an opiate addiction, they have other issues attached to that, and you talked about that somewhat. So what I'm saying, males, females, children, and we do have children who are addicted to opioids, they also have other specialty needs. So they might have an opioid addiction, and then they might have trauma. Or they might have an opioid addiction and they might have schizophrenia or a depression or anxiety disorder. So we're talking about treatment resources. I want to stress that treatment can come in any form or many forms and in different settings. So there's the inpatient hospital setting, there's rehab, there's clinics, we have private medical people who provide treatment, but the clients might need something different, something more, something unique. For example, I have had a number of clients who've had multiple overdoses in 1 week. They might have overdosed on fentanyl on Monday, then again on Thursday, and again on Saturday. And so what I want to have happen for those clients is that they are admitted to a place where there's an interruption in the cycle of use, so that if they're put in a rehab or an inpatient, hospital, just to get them away from the drug, get them away from the environment, get them away from some of the people who might be influencing them negatively. So the problem is there's not enough hospitals or inpatient settings for those people to receive that kind of treatment. Or the outpatient, I might refer them to an outpatient person, but they can't get into that person's, schedule for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So my concern is the resources are not there. And I want to know what we need to do about that.
That it's very alarming, and that is a problem that we are and we should be looking into. But it's based on where they are in their addiction and the resources that are available. Our treatment resources that were pre-pandemic and during showed vulnerability. The pandemic helped us to rethink resources and alternative ways for service that is being delivered or was being delivered. Here's a prime example. I had a client who struggled with feeling isolated during the pandemic. He would often get stressed over not being able to have human contact as it relates to his treatment providers, his support, such as his case manager, NA meetings, AA meetings in person. As a result, the client started to decline in the way of his thinking, functioning, reasoning, and the ability to remain sober.
So, you're talking about one individual client, and I'm actually kind of talking about a more macro perspective.
Yeah.
I'm talking about many people, and you're right. The pandemic was kind of rough on us, but more so rough on the people who struggle with opiate addiction. But I want to also serve notice, or here's a news flash, that the pandemic is still going on.
Still.
I was just looking at the information today that, the Delta variant is on the rise, a plug in for, getting the vaccine, and that there are people who are kind of still dying from this. My understanding is from the data, the CDC, that 97% who are hospitalized for COVID those are unvaccinated individuals.
Yes.
And the people who died are 99.5% are unvaccinated. I digress. I'm going off of that. I want to know what's available to us in terms of opioid treatment in Cuyahoga County, and then more specifically in Cleveland. This is the meat of our discussion. This is why we're here today, and I'm looking to you for your expertise. Tell me about what is available for treatment resources.
I am so honored to give this information out because it is much needed. Here's some general resources for opiate treatment in Cuyahoga County. Metro Health has a robust inpatient and outpatient treatment program that provides opiate addiction, that services people who are recovering from opiate addiction. The contact number is going to be 216-778-77. And here's the website as well, opiatesafety@metrohealth.org. We also have the Hitchcock House for Women. Their contact information is 216-421-0662. We have St. Vincent. They have an opiate treatment program as well. Their contact number is going to be 216-363-2580. University Hospitals of Cleveland, Addiction Recovery Services, and they're going to be located at 10524 Euclid Avenue. Again, that's 10524 Euclid Avenue. 524 Euclid Avenue, and their contact number is going to be 440-848-3593. Now, Matt Talbot for men and women, two different numbers, 216-781-0288. That's for the men. And then for the women, it's going to be 216-634-7500. Again, the women's number is 216-634-7500. And for the men, that's 216-781-0288. This is very important. We have assistance at the VA hospital as well for our veterans. And not that the others aren't important, but we want to just emphasize this about the VA hospital and our veterans. The number is going to be 216-791-3800, and that's extension 6400.
You know, one thing I just want to put a pin in this. You're right that addiction in that population, the veteran population, is big. They've done a lot of literature on that,
Exactly.
and they've tried to increase in that kind of service. So I'm glad you brought that up. But I'll let you move on. I have a couple other things I want to say.
Yes, no. And unfortunately, there are limited resources for our adolescents and teens in Cuyahoga County and Cleveland, in the Cleveland area, but here are a few. Belfair Jewish Children Bureau, the contact number is 216-932-2800, and that's extension 8267. Catholic Charity Services Teen Drug Rehab, that number is going to be 216-391-2030. New Direction Teen Drug Rehab Treatment, and that number is going to be 216-591-0324, and that extension is 2011. And also we have a website for the teen treatment, and that's going to be http:// www.drugrehabcenter.org/category/Ohio. This website is specifically for drug treatment only for teens and adolescents in Ohio.
Now, before you go any further, because you rattled off a number of resources and numbers, and I think, people don't have the same benefit that us providers do. So when I want to know a number or a resource, I don't go to the yellow pages. I call Michelle and say, Michelle, I need some resources.
Okay.
So for those who don't have that benefit, we will have a one-pager, and we'll share this during our Facebook presentation and our Zoom presentation. We'll also have hard copies of all of this information, and it'll be available at St. Timothy. So if you want a hard copy, you can get it there. And then we'll allow for my email. So if you want for me to send you some of this information, we can do that. So again, this information will be available.
Yes.
So why don't you now talk about maybe information from the perspective of the Cleveland area, mainly the Cleveland area.
I also want to just let you know that the website.
Yeah, that's right.
These different places have websites, and they have a little bit more information that we have time to share. So I encourage anyone and everyone to go to these websites and look up this information, because they have a lot more information that we can't cover because of time.
Yeah, and you're right, because they'll talk more specifically about the treatment and the treatment that's available at that location.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
And here's some resources in the Cleveland area that are outpatient services. Recovery resources. They have a phenomenal opiate program, and their number where they can be reached is 216-431-4131. Also Signature Health, and that number is 440-578-8200. Harbor Lights Intensive Outpatient Program. Their number is going to be 216-781-3773, extension 140. Stella Myers have a good program as well, 216-781-0550. And for those who are still apprehensive to meet in person due to COVID and the rising of COVID, there are resources available such as AA, NA, and these are online, and CA, and such as Sober Grid.
You know, the Sober Grid is a nice online resource. One of my clients hit me to that site, and I went on and I looked at it, and I'm like, wow, this is not that I endorse anyone, but I did go on Sober Grid, and I looked at it. So now I want to just say something about the online expansion, and this is more so from a perspective of a older gentleman, and I lack knowledge in terms of technology. I'm not tech savvy. So it's funny. Last week, a client of mine, shared a video of him on TikTok. And first of all, I didn't know what TikTok was, and and he said, "Here, I'm going to show you something on TikTok." I'm like, "What is that? Big Ben, or what is that? A watch, or what is it?" But it was actually an app, and on this app, he was sharing information about his recovery. And so he was doing, I don't know what they call it, the kids call it, but anyway, he was talking about, hey, I've been sober for 6 months, and I'm using these kind of resources to stay sober and whatever. And the first thing I thought about it was like, wow, if somebody gave me $1 million to go back and find where that was, I wouldn't be able to do that, because I'm not that connected to TikTok. Yeah. Number two, it also reminded me that the method that we used in the past can be maybe outdated, and it needs to evolve. Yeah. Now, again, I'm not part of that generation, so that sharing of your personal information hour to hour, minute to minute, for me, I think it's a little bit too much.
Very transparent.
Yeah.
They'll give you
That's one way to look at it. Yeah. But I think we need to kind of be more accepting of that kind of stuff, because that's what's going on with this generation, and we need to reach this generation. But in a somber note about that, I thought about it, and some of our clients might not have the finance to purchase an iPhone or an Android, because they don't have the finances to do that. Number two, some people can't afford the internet. So I think we need to kind of look at that as well. There's something to be said about the one-on-one personal contact and support that people need for those who might not have the wherewithal to find those resources.
Yeah.
So
I must agree with you. I'm a little, when it comes to TikTok, I'm challenged in that department as well. So you're not alone. But I do want to cover the technology. Technology was convenient for us, but it wasn't so good for the client. They have triggers: isolation, feelings of fear, abandonment, a personal need to meet with their caregivers, the intimacy of contact when you don't get it. You become anxious, frustrated, which has the potential to lead to relapse.
Right. So I want to, we talked about individual resources. You did a great job of kind of talking about those things that are available. I want to put a point of emphasis on the complexity of our clients. Okay. So I want to go back at that one more time and kick the tires as it relates to resources in Cuyahoga County, resources in Cleveland. But I want to do it a different way.
Okay.
I want to do something that we've done in the hospital. Yeah. Things like a case conference. So I want to bring a case forward and let others see how we tackle real complex cases.
Oh, that's important.
And so they know that we're not operating in a vacuum, that we're operating as a team. The client is at the center of us doing that. So let me give you a case. Mm-hmm. So this is a 44-year-old female. Mm-hmm. And this person has been using opiates since the age of 14. So that means that she has a 30-year history of opiate use. And more importantly, this person has a significant trauma history. So we batted around this word about trauma. What is trauma? I'm talking about this person was physically abused, sexually abused, and verbally abused. And again, this is a fictitious case, but it illustrates what we're dealing with and what we're working with, or how we're working with that client. And to move the complexity even further, this person is struggling with housing and finances, meaning she's about to lose her house. And she has no other resources, so she's holding the house together on a shoestring.
Yeah.
The last point I want to bring forth is this woman has 3 children, and she's the head of the household. And Child and Family Services, they're talking about coming in and removing the kids from her care. So I want you to kind of walk through how you would manage this case.
Absolutely. And even though this is a fictitious case, these things happen. It's real. So
We see them day to day.
Day to day, every day, just about every day. So collaborating with various supports is key when developing a plan of care. Women who are dealing with addiction, they often are dealing with trauma and abuse.
Now, so let me interject one other thing, because this is something that you often say, or other, case managers say, but I want to interject. The probability of trauma is high in those who are dealing with addiction, and that's men and women, meaning men have been traumatized as well. So just want to put that point in.
Exactly, but I'm talking about this specific case that you just presented, and this is how I would walk through my treatment approach for clients suffering with this type of trauma. We have resources for men as well, but right now, in this case study we are discussing involves a woman.
Okay.
My first thoughts are compatibility. The resource in this instance may not include a male provider. They may need a female provider, a female trauma group, a female counselor, and maybe a female caseworker.
Yeah, so I like the way that you're kind of now getting to matching the resources with the client's need. The provider, that's myself included, we can't be thin-skinned. Like if the person doesn't fit with us, okay, that's all right. It doesn't mean anything. We have to get out of the place of the view of our resources to, it expands past the brick and mortar.
Yes.
We need to make sure we're looking at human capital resources.
Exactly.
That means the therapeutic use of ourselves.
Yes.
And finding, the right fit for the client, the right provider, irrespective of a building or a name or a program. So you're right.
Exactly. So let's close the loop on the 44-year-old client. I would first talk with you about the best fit and suggest maybe a female colleague of yours to take on the case. B, I would recommend she is referred to Recovery Resources Female Trauma Group. And C, I would recommend she have individual counseling by a female counselor. Also, very important, I would refer her to parenting groups as well. Most times when women are going through things and their children are talked about being removed from the home, they just panic and it becomes even worse.
And they run from treatment.
They run from treatment. So I would also, in E, most again important, I would keep this client as the case manager for continuity.
Yeah, I think that just illustrates how the case manager is kind of like the glue.
Exactly.
So I might see a person for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, but you see them, quite a bit, and you see them in their own living environment. So you bring back information like they're doing okay, or they're struggling in this area, and so that's important.
It's very important.
So now let's talk about another big resource that the person who's struggling with opiates might have. That's the family. So the family is a big resource, a big support, but many times people who are struggling with addiction, they burn the family out, and the family is saying, hey, I've had enough. They have these crises, and then when they're not having a crisis, then they have this, this kind of chronic stuff. So what about the family? How do we address them?
Good point, and it is very, very important to know that the family gets burnt out too. People are just looking at the addict and what they're going through, but the family is going through just as much, or it's bad. And so family, what I do have is a program called NAMI. A program called NAMI. It offers an 8-session educational program called Family to Family. This opportunity is for families, significant others, friends, along with additional programs such as Double Trouble in Recovery. It's a 12-step fellowship for people managing both a mental illness and a substance use disorders. Alcohol Anonymous and Narcotic Anonymous. It's also a 12-step group for people recovering from alcohol or drug addiction. But be sure, and this is very important, be sure to find a group that understands the role of mental health treatment in recovery.
And that's important, because sometimes, and I don't want to get into a fight with any outside entity, but they might tell the client, hey, don't take your medicines.
Oh, yeah.
And then they'll have their mental illness symptoms, resurface, and then they're more vulnerable to relapse. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Very important. Also, Smart Recovery is a sobriety group for people with a variety of addictions that is not based in faith. For family and significant others who deal with those addicted, we have the Cornerstone of Hope as well.
So, and there's one other new family group I heard about, like Recovery Resources.
Yes.
They're doing a family to family. I think it's on every Tuesday. I will confirm that and make sure that's new. They're embracing the concepts of NAMI. And so I know the guy who's running it, and he's a pretty good guy, and he's a pretty knowledgeable guy. So we've done the routine stuff.
Okay.
I got something that I'm going to try to stomp you on this one.
Okay.
All right. I want to talk about what's available to the person in those unique times. So the person is struggling with opiate addiction, and say they're on vacation, so they're out of their element. Or that the person is, it's Christmas or it's New Year's, and they usually would spend time with the family, but the family is drinking or blowing trees or whatever it is, and that they get into. Or say it's a repast, and the family is getting together after a death, and so there's a tragedy, and then there's drinking. Or it's the holidays, and there's just this conflict that's going on with the family. What would you suggest, or is there things that we need to kind of further develop in this area for those unique times like the holidays? What would you suggest?
Yeah, that is very important. And again, you have to really pay attention, because the holidays are coming, and having a plan in place before these holidays come is very, very important. We know that the holidays are coming up. The recovering addict may or may not be showing signs of anxiety. The trigger does not have to always come from drinking. It could be a loss in the family, or that house where the party is going to be. That could be reminders of a lot of things that may have happened to them. So it could be grief, an argument, or some form of conflict.
So, for me, I know what I really want to get at the holidays, the gatherings, the family gatherings, is that plate. So I brought this forward to one of my clients, and I said, hey, how would you manage this? And she said, hey, I've done this already.
Yeah.
And she came up with a real creative way. And she stated she would ask someone who was in the program with her, that has, a great deal of sobriety. They have years under their belt of abstinence from opiates. And she said, hey, would you go with me to my family gathering? And then they would develop a plan. We're going to stay 30 or 40 minutes. And what we're going to do is give FaceTime. grab the plate or whatever we need, speak to the people that we need to speak to, and she said, then we'll leave. Actually, the word she said, we'll dip, and I said, oh, okay. So that's a great way to go about it.
Yeah.
Just another creative way of doing it.
Absolutely, but as you and I both know, plans can sometimes fall through. They don't always go as you plan. So in this instant, staying away is best. Avoiding the place altogether is best, I would think. I would have that plate brought to me in a safe environment where there's no arguments, where there's no memories that could be, of course the memories will come up at times, especially on certain holidays, but being in the presence of them where things happen, it's just best to have that plate brought to you free of drugs, free of conflict, free of anger and arguments. Just people that are not good to be around at that time.
And then the last thing we talked about is having a dry house.
Oh,
so
house
that's
is good.
it. We're actually coming to a close, and so we're up against a time crunch. So I'm not going to ask what I would usually ask, which is, what if you had more time, what would you present? So what I will do is I will say we're ending the session, and we're going to let you know of the dates and times where this will be airing. So thank you for coming,
Exactly.
Michelle. We thank the Ascension Group for selecting us to host. I once again would like to thank each of you for participating in the community education and dialogue regarding opiate addiction and available resources in the community. Hopefully we provided some additional enlightenment and information regarding treatment resources. The presentation will be aired on several platforms. St. Timothy will air it on their Facebook on July the 30th from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. and radio station KAZ will also air it at the same time. The Ascension Group will air this via Zoom on July the 24th and 27th from 7 to 8 p.m. At that time, we'll do Q&As. We look to make sure that it's available to you and that you make yourself available to it. There are two other
right.
offerings that I'm going to put shameless plugs in for. We're going to be offering a presentation on opiate addiction, heroin, fentanyl, and painkillers, the battle of your lifetime. At that time, we'll have another nurse practitioner with me and a person who actually was struggling with this addiction, and she'll bring her story forward. And then to close it out, we'll have Dr. Neera Gupta, the medical director from Recovery Resources, talking about treatment options. So again, the dates are July the 30th, St. Timothy. The Ascension Group will be doing it July the 24th and the 27th. All of them will be from 7 to 8 p.m. Avail yourself of those dates. We thank you for your most valuable commodity,
Yes.
which is time. Thanks.
Thank you.